Let's get more with Mark Regev, advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister, former Israeli ambassador to the United Kingdom. Hello to you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you for joining us on the programme this morning.
Good morning, Kate.
Fuel to this hospital. What are we doing about it?
We delivered fuel 2 days ago. The Israeli army approached the hospital and left, I think it was 300 meters from the hospital, a supply of fuel for the generators. And it's my understanding that that fuel is still there because Hamas is preventing the hospital staff from picking up the fuel.
How much fuel?
I think it was 300, 400 litres of fuel, enough for the generators. And of course, if they use it, they'll get more. We don't see the patients in the hospital, especially the babies in the incubators. They're not our enemies. We want to do everything we can to safeguard them.
300 litres is enough for about half an hour, apparently.
We'll deliver more, but first of all, let's see them take what we've given them. If Hamas is not letting them take 300 litres, they're not going to let them take 1,000 litres either.
I heard a Palestinian representative on the radio this morning saying that amount of fuel is absolutely pointless to us. Why do they not give us more? Why not offer them more to start with?
Once again, their fuel is there for them to take. They have refused to take it, and then they say they want more. And I think it's very important to say people giving interviews from that hospital are only doing so with the authorization of Hamas. None of the people giving interviews from the hospital have talked about the Hamas military infrastructure underneath the hospital. But your own report says there's fighting around the hospital. That means people are shooting at our forces. Well, is there any more proof you need that that Hamas has turned the hospital into a military as part of a defense structure for its military machine?
How do you expect people that are in the hospital sheltering in place to get out?
Well, first of all, they have been getting out. The hospital is not completely surrounded. On the eastern exit of the hospital, there's a street, and we've been encouraging people who can leave to leave. And we understand that not everyone can leave, so we've said we're ready to supply ambulances to help people leave if they need to leave in an ambulance. And we've, at the same time, we don't target the hospital, and we're not interested in the people inside the hospital getting hurt. And that's why we've supplied fuel, and we're willing to supply more fuel if need be.
So you don't target the hospital, but you do fire at the hospital because Hamas are underneath?
We fire at Hamas. We don't fire at the hospital. We fire at Hamas. But what has to be said here is those babies in the hospital are in many ways victims of Hamas's brutality. We saw that Hamas killed Israeli babies when they entered Israel on October 7th, and they numerous pictures. You can't show them on Sky, obviously, because they're terrible, but they were babies in cots just riddled with bullets, killed, murdered by Hamas. Babies burnt to death by Hamas. And then you have the babies who are kidnapped by Hamas. Out of the 239 hostages kidnapped by Hamas, there are infants and babies, 32 children. And add to that now the babies, the Palestinian babies that Hamas is using as a human shield for its war machine. This is the enemy we're up against.
So you're firing underneath the hospital, but not actually at the hospital?
We're firing at Hamas targets. We're not firing at the hospital. We are trying to safeguard the people inside the hospital.
Where are the Hamas targets? They're underneath the hospital?
Yeah, if they're underneath the hospital, if they're around the hospital, if they're in tunnels.
Underneath the hospital?
Look, Kay, it has to be understood that Hamas has deliberately built its central command and control under the hospital, and from that position there's a network of tunnels. One of the hostages who was released talked about a spider web of tunnels under the ground in Gaza. And these tunnels from the hospital, they lead to missile launching sites, they lead to arms depots, they lead to other fortifications. There's a massive subterranean infrastructure that Hamas controls, and that's their military machine, and we have to destroy that machine.
Was Antony Blinken right to say far too many Palestinians have died in Gaza?
Yes, we agree. We didn't want a single Palestinian civilian caught up in the crossfire between us and Hamas. And that's why we've made a maximum effort to try to safeguard the civilian population. It's a month now. We've asked people to leave Gaza City. And the truth is most people have heeded our advice and have voted with their feet to move. And close to 1 million people have left the north of Gaza. There's only a minority that left who remain, and many of them have been forced to stay by Hamas at gunpoint. Now, as Hamas's control of the northern Gaza Strip is now not total because we have taken them on, There are more people leaving. I think just yesterday we had 50,000 leaving, the day before 70,000 leaving. These are people that I believe wanted to leave earlier, but Hamas forced them to stay as human shields for its terror machine.
Or many of them who are so poorly that they can't leave and they need to go to hospitals that, unfortunately, are now being targeted because Hamas are underneath them.
It's a problem. I mean, Hamas has made a very, very difficult situation by turning hospitals deliberately, not accidentally, deliberately putting its military terror machine underneath hospitals, using them as shields, which, of course, as you know, Kay, is a war crime under international law. But we're trying to be as surgical as we can be in dealing with the threat. We're not targeting civilians. We're not targeting hospitals. We're targeting a brutal enemy, Hamas.
What are we going to do about these babies that there's no power at the hospital? They need power in order to run incubators and the like for these babies. What are you going to do about them?
Well, first of all, we've already delivered fuel that Hamas refused to allow the hospital staff to take the fuel. That's a different matter. But we've delivered fuel, and we've also offered to relocate the babies.
Mr. Ambassador, we've already clarified that it's a drop in the bucket. They need tens of thousands of litres of fuel, and you offered 300 litres. When will you offer them more?
Okay, the 300 litres is outside the hospital, and they have not taken yet. Surely we shouldn't stockpile fuel when they're not taking the fuel. We're willing to give more if need be.
So when might you do that? As soon as they remove the 300 litres? All you need to see is for them to move the 300 litres, and then you'll send them the tens of thousands of litres that they need?
We have no interest whatsoever in any harm coming to those babies. On the contrary, we'll do whatever we can to save
where they are.
We're willing to relocate them as well, Kay. We said we'll facilitate ambulances to relocate them to a safer location. But this whole problem has been caused by Hamas, which has turned a hospital. It has deliberately brutalized a hospital, deliberately exploited it as a human shield for its war machine. The condemnation has to be on Hamas. If those babies are in danger, it's because Hamas has deliberately turned that hospital into a war zone, which is a war crime. You're not allowed to do it according to international law.
An Israeli spokesperson who I've actually interviewed on the programme, I think I interviewed him last week, Elon Levy, he was talking about the protests here in London at the weekend, the pro-Palestinian protesters, and he described them as rape apologists. Do you think that was the right language to use? He did it on Twitter.
I don't think he told them all rape apologists. How does the tweet read?
I don't think London has ever seen such a large demonstration of rape apologists before.
Okay. Now, the truth is, Hamas, when it attacked us on October 7th, there are massive atrocities, crime against women and against girls. There were massive rapes, multiple examples of rape and then murder. There was a session yesterday at Harvard University to talk about this, gender-based violence.
Are you condoning what you said is what my question, Mr. Ambassador.
Since the terrible fighting in Yugoslavia, there's
Are you condoning what you said, Mr. Ambassador?
Against violence against women, about violence against women in armed conflict, and there should be no tolerance for it whatsoever.
OK. Thanks very much indeed for joining us on the programme. Thank you. Much appreciated as always. Just want to update you on some breaking